ඔෆිස් එකේදී විතරක් නෙවෙයි මම දැන් ගෙදරදිත් IDD කෝල්ස් ගන්නේ SLT ෆෝන් එකේ.
ඔබේ නිවසේ SLT දුරකථනය දැන් IDD පහසුකම සහිතයි.
Making headlines here at First at 9. Conditional aid. The US allocates $35 million for Sri Lanka under strict conditions. Means to an end. Joint opposition to support the abolishment of executive presidency in return for dissolution of parliament. Hidden mafia. Tourist Hotels Association alleges systematic harassment of tourists.
Many of the successive governments have failed to address this issue.
Calling time. Nick Potas resigns as the national fielding coach. We saw nothing. Hospital medic in Duma contradicts claims of chemical weapons attack in Syria. Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Ekanaika. Let's start with the local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena will address the Commonwealth Business Forum as the keynote speaker tomorrow. Today is the President's second day of his official visit to London to attend this year's Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting commenced yesterday under the theme Towards a Common Future. Attended by 53 heads of nations in the world, it is the biggest summit hosted by the United Kingdom. President Maithripala Sirisena, who arrived in London yesterday to participate in the meeting, will address the Commonwealth Business Forum as the keynote speaker tomorrow on the theme Delivering the SDGs, Aligning Business, Society and the Governments. He will then address the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting on Thursday.
The President will address the Commonwealth Business Forum as the keynote speaker tomorrow. In his speech, the President will focus on business and investment opportunities within Sri Lanka. I would also mention that during the CHOGM this year, Sri Lanka will be noted as a country which contributes highly to mangrove conservation. Now, last month, US President that is Donald Trump signed into law the 2018 Omnibus Appropriations Act following Congress approval, which spans across multiple budget areas and funding federal government operations for the remainder of the fiscal year. The $1.3 trillion omnibus bill has allocated $35 million to Sri Lanka's economic development and democracy programs, particularly in the regions recovering from ethnic and religious conflict. Furthermore, the act entails conditions on the funding available to Sri Lanka for the rest of the financial year of 2018, which include increasing accountability and transparency in governance, as well as repealing laws that do not comply with international standards, particularly in addressing war crimes. According to the 2018 Omnibus Appropriations Act under the title Bilateral Economic Assistance, funds appropriated to Sri Lanka will be not less than $35 million and shall be made available for assistance in economic development and democracy programs, particularly in areas recovering from ethnic and religious conflict. The Act further states that funds appropriated to the government may be available only if the US Secretary of State certifies and reports to the committees on appropriations. These conditions see that Sri Lanka repeals laws that do not comply with international standards for arrest and detention by security forces and ensuring that any successor legislation meets such standards, as well as increasing accountability and transparency in governance. The US also sets conditions that the government investigates allegations of arbitrary arrest and torture and supporting a credible justice mechanism in compliance with United Nations Human Rights Council resolution. It also includes returning military-occupied private lands in former conflict zones to their rightful owners or compensating those whose lands was confiscated without due process. The Act also states that a functioning Office of Missing Persons and assisting its investigations of cases of missing persons from internal armed conflicts and publishing lists of all persons who surrendered to such government after the end of the civil war in May 2009 be established, as well as substantially reducing the presence of armed forces in former conflict zones. In addition, the fact further states that $500,000 will be appropriated for foreign military financing program to support humanitarian and disaster response preparedness and maritime security, as well as peacekeeping operations, only if the government is taking effective steps to bring to justice Sri Lankan peacekeeping troops who have engaged in sexual exploitation and abuse. Following the termination of the first session of the 8th Parliament, many committees such as the Committee on Public Finance, Committee for Special Purposes, Standing Committees, Legislative and Consultative Committees have been nullified. Deputy Secretary-General of Parliament Neil Iddavala said draft bills as well as private member proposals will also be nullified.
As per powers vested with the President under the Constitution of 1978, the President is able to terminate a parliamentary session until its commencement on a date which does not exceed 2 months from the date of termination. Accordingly, issuing an extraordinary Gazette notification, President Maithripala Sirisena terminated the first session of the 8th Parliament on the 12th of this month. The Gazette notification also highlighted the date of commencement of the second parliamentary session to be 8th of May. The final gathering of the first session of the 8th Parliament was held on the 6th of this month. The session was later postponed until the 19th of April due to the Sinhala and Tamil New Year festivities. Agenda for the day include the second reading debates on the National Audit Bill, Judicature Amendment Bill, Securities and Exchange Bill, as well as the 20th Constitutional Amendment Draft Bill. Deputy Secretary-General of Parliament Neil Iddavala said that second reading of all draft bills and private member proposals will be nullified following President's decision to conclude parliamentary sessions on the day. He, however, went on to say that necessary draft bills and private member proposals can be included to the agenda of Parliament once the second session commences. Commenting further on the matter, he also said that there won't be any nullification of sectoral oversight committees, high post committee or special committee. Meanwhile, several politicians expressed their views on the matter.
The President too wasn't sure who would have joined with the opposition from the SLFP. He must have thought the postponement of parliamentary session will give him some time to resolve the current uncertainty. We don't agree with the President's decision at all. This only proves that he still doesn't respect the public mandate given to him in 2015. All committees of the Parliament have concluded following President's decision to conclude the parliamentary sessions. Parliament must now start over. I believe that this conclusion of sessions to be a new beginning for the country. Parliamentarian of the United People's Freedom Alliance, Dr. Bandula Gunawardene, insists that the joint opposition would only back the abolishment of the executive presidency if the relevant proposal also contains one to dissolve the parliament. Parliamentarian Dr. Gunawardene made this remark today during a media briefing convened by the Economic Research Unit of the joint opposition in Colombo. There is political instability in the country. All 16 SLFP parliamentarians who voted in favour of the no-confidence motion will sit in the opposition. It may be the reason to prorogue the parliament. The government will soon lose the two-thirds majority in parliament. JVP has said that they would bring a proposal in Parliament to abolish the executive presidency. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, on behalf of the joint opposition, informed the leader of the JVP, Anurakumara Dissanayake, that the joint opposition will only support the move if it proposes to dissolve the Parliament on the same day. MP Gunawardene also said that they don't have any issues with accepting parliamentarians of the SLFP who wish to join them. Political decisions cannot be taken on personal issues. Our first aim is to end the government's two-thirds majority. Whoever comes to strengthen us will be welcomed, irrespective of whatever they may have done in the past. Attorney at law Krishmal Varnasuri says that as per the Constitution, there is no such thing as a unity government. Speaking exclusively to First at 9, he added that in this backdrop, a constitutional question will arise from the President if in fact the formation of a unity government was in fact lawful.
constitutionally there was no unity government. Because if you look at the constitution, this clearly says what a government of national unity ought to be. Remember when we drafted this, the ratio again of the 19th Amendment was to reduce the number of ministers because you reduce the amount of public expenditure on these jumbo cabinets that we used to have. But they gave a proviso to that. So the rule was 46-1, the total number of cabinet ministers should not exceed 30. That's the law. Then they gave a proviso to that and say, notwithstanding anything elsewhere, if a national government is formed, you don't have an upper limit or a ceiling on the number of ministers. Now what happened thereafter? Sub-article 5 of 46 explains what a national government is. This says the recognized political party or independent group which obtains the highest number of seats in parliament, which in the last election was the UNF government, together with the other recognized political parties or independent groups. Now, who they formed the so-called unity government with was part of a political party, not a political party. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party SLFP or the alliance that they were a concomitant part of, which was the Podujana Peramuna, is a party that contested the election. They can't decide for one side of that party to remain in the opposition and another side, few members of that party to go and make a government. That is not constitutional. And now I think the problem will be more, because now even some of that part of the party, another part has gone off, has fallen off, and they are saying that they are going to sit in the opposition. So a constitutional question will arise before His Excellency the President, on whom we have given our executive power, as to whether what he forms is constitutional and therefore lawful.
Now, Professor Rohan Samarajiva, who is the newly appointed chairman for the Information and Communication Technology Agency, which is known as ICTA, says that the new board of directors have already gotten an extensive review on all ongoing projects. Professor Samarajiva is the former Director General of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission and contributed to the design of e-Sri Lanka initiative by the ICTA in 2003.
E-government, or the use of ICTs in government, there is a need for an entity that works across different government departments, because there's no point in having completely independent systems for each ministry and each institution. So they have done a lot of these things, but unfortunately quite a lot of these stories have not been communicated properly, and we are reviewing all these projects with the new board so that this information is communicated to the people and they know that they can use these new services that are coming on stream. In addition, there are a whole number of other areas. It's not like the old days where ICTs was limited to software or business process outsourcing. Now ICTs is everything. So there's a lot of cross-cutting, coordinating activity involving multiple government departments and private sector actors that ICTA will be seeking to put together and to catalyze and to move forward. So what you will see in the next few months with the new board that has already got working, it has already had an extensive review of the main projects. We know there are some shortcomings with regard to some of the government websites and so on. I hope we will be given a little bit of time to resolve these problems and move forward, and we look forward to the cooperation of all the stakeholders and all the parties concerned, which in the case of ICTs is actually everybody.
Customs staff attached to the AML parcel section of the General Post Office in Colombo detected 1.4 kilograms of hashish valued at 1.4 million rupees concealed in a skateboard today. The parcel containing the skateboard has been sent to a person in Nugegodo from Spain. Now let's take a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
Parliamentarian Mahinda Nandalut Gamage, who was remanded over misappropriation of 39 million rupees under the previous government, was released on bail today. The MP was remanded until today as he failed to meet one of 3 bail conditions, where he was asked to surrender his passport to court. Today, the Colombo High Court informed the 4th Magistrates Court that the travel document is in its custody, following which the parliamentarian was released on bail. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today engaged in a tour in the area of Muskelia in Nuwara Eliya. The Premier was accompanied by parliamentarian of the Nuwara district, K.K. Piyadasa, and the Deputy Chairman of the Hattendikoya Pradeshiya Sabha, A.J.M. Sami. The first session of the Vavuniya North Pradeshiya Sabha was conducted today. The local authority's chairman had to be decided with a coin toss, and following which K. Thanikasalayam of the Tamil National Alliance was elected. Several houses and state buildings in the area of Mirigam and Gampaha sustained damages owing to strong winds and rain last evening. Some crows which were trapped in fallen trees were also rescued by locals. A three-wheel and motorbike collided in the area of Bolgod in Bandaragama, leaving the bike in hospital. The three-wheeler, which was flying from Panadura, had attempted to turn into a by-road when the motorbike, which came from behind, collided with it. In the meantime, a motorcyclist lost his life when his bike collided with a cab in the area of Del Mallav in Sinhala around 7 last night. The two vehicles had been travelling in the opposite direction, and the motorcyclist succumbed to his injuries after being admitted to the Horana Base Hospital.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Minister of Tourism, Development and Christian Religious Affairs, John Amartunga, assures that the government is taking all possible measures to assure the safety of foreign tourists. Speaking at the same platform, the Tourist Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, however, claimed that a mafia is in play along the southern coastline, which has been harassing foreign tourists over a long period of time. The thoughts were expressed during an awareness media briefing on action pertaining to 2 harassment cases involving foreign tourists.
Many of the successive governments have failed to address this issue. Tourists get harassed on the beach, when they use public transport, when they walk on the roads, when they go to standalone restaurants like what happened in Mirissa. This has been going on for years and years. But unfortunately, these culprits or these perpetrators are a gang. It's a big mafia going on in the south coast. Even, I'm sorry to say, the police are also helpless sometimes because these people are backed by local politicians. And this is something that I would like to highlight today, that we must ensure that the law and order is enforced irrespective of people who are connected or not, because that's the only way we can safeguard this industry. Because today this harassment for tourists is going on all over the country, and especially on the south coast of Sri Lanka. And this is a pity because people come here thinking that, or knowing that Sri Lanka is a friendly country, a safe place to visit, and when they get harassed like this, it's actually ruined our reputation. So I'm glad that the Honourable Minister has today come out very strongly, and as Minister of Tourism, he said that he's going to take all the action what he could take and bring this to the attention of the government at the top level.
I hope they are isolated incidents, but I don't know whether there is a design behind it in order to bring Sri Lanka to disrepute. 2 things. Complaint must be made, otherwise people don't know. Police do not know unless there is a complaint that is made either to the tourism SLTDA or to the police. So this is also something that is lacking. As suggested, said they go back to their country and then complain. That's not the thing. The immediate complaint is lodged. As far as possible, we will try to give the assurance that the safety of the tourists, provided they also get around at reasonable hours and with registered tour guides.
Oil prices rose today amid worries there could be a high risk of disruptions to supply, especially in the Middle East. Brent crude oil futures were at $71.80 per barrel, up 38 cents from their last close. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were also up 39 cents or 0.6% at $66.61 a barrel. Traders said oil markets were receiving general support due to a sense that there were high risks of supply disruptions, including a potentially spreading conflict in the Middle East, renewed US sanctions against Iran, and falling output as a result of political and economic crisis in Venezuela. Now, China's economy grew faster than expected in the first quarter at an annual pace of 6.8% compared to the same period last year. According to official data, growth figures for January to March were also above Beijing's 2018 annual growth target of around 6.5%. Analysts observe that data shows resilience in the world's second largest economy, helped by strong consumer demand, healthy exports and robust prosperity investment. Property, that is. However, concerns about China's economy, including rising debt levels, remain as the government is still fighting to contain ballooning debt and a housing bubble without hurting growth. Now to bring you a market update, shares hit a 5-week closing high in thin trade today, rising to a fifth straight session as many market participants stayed away due to extended holidays after the Sinhala and Tamil New Year festival over the weekend. The all-share price index ended 0.74% higher at 6,544.25, its highest close since the 13th of March. Let's now cross over to Meshi Fernando from the Colombo Stock Exchange for a detailed picture from the trading floor.
The market capitalization at the end of the day was 3,063.52 billion rupees. Today's foreign purchases were 43.64 million rupees and foreign sales were 34.15 million rupees. There were 5 crossings today and the crossing turnover was 165.6 million rupees.
The Sri Lankan rupee touched an all-time low on dollar demand from importers, while exporter sales of the greenback were low due to extended holidays in corporate houses after the New Year festival. The rupee dropped 0.1% to 156 rupees and 35 cents per dollar, surpassing its previous low of 156 rupees and 20 cents hit on the 16th of March. The currency closed at 156 rupees and 35 to 45 cents, weaker from yesterday's close of 156 rupees and 5 to 15 cents. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies during the day.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. Now it's time to have a look at news from around the world. A medic of the hospital in the Syrian town of Douma, where a suspected chemical attack was reported, has come forward saying that no symptoms of chemical poisoning was diagnosed in the patients admitted. An inspection team sent by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons arrived in Syria on Saturday, but has not been allowed to visit Douma. Russia, however, said today that the team will be permitted to visit the site of the alleged attack on Wednesday. Video clips of the suspected chemical attack in the Syrian town of Douma showed that children foamed at their mouths in the basement of a severely damaged building. A medic of a hospital not far from the building shown in the video, however, says that no symptoms of chemical poisoning were diagnosed in the patients admitted. The alleged chemical attack on the 7th of April prompted military strikes on Syrian government targets by the US, UK and France a week later. Syria and its ally Russia deny any chemical attack took place, with Russia calling it a staged thing. An intern medic at the hospital said that some patients had respiration problems due to the dust, smoke and gravels in the basement. They were hiding and they were treated. He added that a group of unidentified people came to the hospital and started to spread panic about a chemical attack, although no symptoms of chemical poisoning were diagnosed in the patients. An inspection team sent by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons arrived in Syria on Saturday, but has not been allowed to visit Douma, but Russia says that the team will be permitted to visit the site of the alleged attack on Wednesday. Moving on with other stories, a Californian judge has ruled that Facebook must face a class action lawsuit over its use of facial recognition technology. The lawsuit alleges that Facebook gathered biometric information without users' explicit consent. The lawsuit says it involves the tag suggesting technology, which spots users' friends in uploaded photos, and this breaches Illinois state law. Facebook said the case had no merit and it would fight it vigorously. Let's now take a look at some of the other emerging stories from around the world. A searing memoir by former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations, James Comey, who was fired last May by US President Donald Trump, went on sale early today in a midnight release after reportedly brisk pre-sales ahead of its official release. The release of the book came as US President Donald Trump, his White House staff and Republican National Committee escalated their attack against Comey, who called Trump a morally unfit leader in an interview. A senior Canadian government official said yesterday that Canada will remove families of diplomats posted in its embassy in Cuba as the cause of unusual health symptoms is still unknown. The information received from medical specialists has raised concerns of a new type of acquired brain injury. Canada is continuing to investigate the cause of the symptoms that were first reported by Canadians connected to the Havana embassy in 2017 and have also affected US diplomats in Cuba. Forest officials captured a troublesome adolescent leopard in India's northern Bharuch district yesterday. The leopard had reportedly attacked a woman while she was working in a farm outside the town and two others when they came to her rescue. Upon seeing a huge crowd, it entered a nearby thatched hut from where it was tranquilized and captured in a cage. Amateur video uploaded to the internet over the last 2 days showed an out-of-control bushfire that has been raging across the Australian city of Sydney. Australian authorities say the large bushfire that has threatened homes in Sydney is likely to have been deliberately lit. Time for sports. Now, putting an end to speculation, Sri Lanka Cricket announced today that national fielding coach Nick Pottas has resigned from his position with immediate effect from the 13th of April. In an attached statement, Pottas said, "After 2 incredible years with Sri Lanka Cricket, this is the right time for him to move on to other opportunities which will allow him to spend quality time with his young family." Pottas was also Sri Lanka's interim head coach for roughly half of 2017. His contract with SLC was set to expire in August this year. Now, in the meantime, there is also speculation on a new appointment, with cricket website Cricinfo saying former Pakistan leg spinner Mushtaq Ahmed is among those being considered by Sri Lanka Cricket for the position of spin bowling coach. The modern-day tennis world was taken back to the times of John McEnroe yesterday when a tennis player lost the plot on court and berated an umpire. World number 51 Jared Donaldson confronted an umpire after disagreeing with a call made in his first-round bout at the Monte Carlo Masters.
Data showed Donaldson was correct, but Hawkeye was not in use. Donaldson eventually lost 6-3, 6-3 and apologized to his opponent for his behavior but refused to shake Gaba's hand. Gabas was the umpire who suffered an eye socket fracture last year when a wayward Denis Shapovalov shot him in the face during Canada's Davis Cup tie with Great Britain.
Now, moving on to the Indian Premier League, Kolkata Knight Riders recorded their second win in this season's edition of the competition yesterday. They defeated Delhi Daredevils by a massive 71 runs. The victory by the Knight Riders earned them more than mere points as they were treated to a special welcome at their hotel. It was put together by the hotel staff.
That's gone for 6.
Let's cross over to Manusha Jayadilaka at the Other Derana Weather Centre with your Forecast First evening edition.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
A very good evening and welcome to Forecast First. Now, your temperatures for tomorrow may vary between 20 to 31 degrees Celsius. And moving on to your rain forecast for the next 24 hours, showers or thunder showers can be expected in most provinces of the island. There will be some heavy showers, particularly in the western, southern and eastern coastal areas of Sri Lanka. Misty conditions, meanwhile, can be expected at some places in the Sabaragamuwa and central provinces during morning hours. Well, that's it from your weather centre tonight. Up next is your city by city forecast.
Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. And before we go, we'd like to take you to Al, one of the most favoured tourist attractions in Sri Lanka. Starting from the railway station in the town to the new town to the Nine Arch Bridge, Ravana Falls and the famous Little Adams Peak, Al gives both local and foreign tourists the most mesmerising experience in nature. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.